Hi, everyone. Welcome to the very first episode of AI Dev Diary. I'm Guy. I'm your host.
And I'm Ashnil Dixit.
In my day job, I work at Google. I help game developers and app developers build and launch games and apps. I've done it over the past 10 years.
Like Guy, I also work in the Google Play Partnerships team, focusing on helping app and game developers get their products built and launched. But just a quick note, this is AI Dev Diary. This is a passion project of ours. It's not affiliated with Google. And any opinions we share are entirely our own.
We're doing this because we're really fascinated, by the massive shift in platform that is driven by AI. And we in our jobs we work with many developers. We really want to chronicle and kind of document the journey, the opportunities, and the challenges that the developer face as they're thinking through how to incorporate AI into their work, into their team, and that's why we come up with the name AI Dev Diary. And given that there's so many new tools, new models coming up every day, we want to really get into the details and talk to developers who are actually working on building things.
Great point. I think the way we always talk about it is we don't just want to read the headlines. We want to talk to the people doing the real work, the founders and engineers who are integrating AI into their products, into their teams, into their workflows. We want to know what's hype and what's actually shipping.
Yep. And, for our very first episode, we have a perfect guest to kick things off. If you have ever felt the pain of hand coding UI from Figma and thought, hey, why can't AI do all of this? Our guest today has a solution for that.
We're thrilled to have Honey Mittal, the co-founder and CEO of Locofy. Honey, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on your first episode. And my name is Honey Mittal, co-founder of Locofy. And looking forward to this first episode.
Awesome. So great to have you here, Honey. Before we kind of get into a bit more about Locofy and AI, if you can tell us a bit more about yourself and your journey, what led you to Locofy, so that our listeners get to know you a bit more.
Yeah, cool. So I've been in Singapore now for my entire adult life, but I come from the north of India, near the Himalayas, a place called Dehradun. That was the only place I had stayed in, I think, for 18 years. And then all of a sudden, my life changed. Thankfully, got a scholarship at National University of Singapore. So my first flight, my first phone, my first laptop, internet, all came in the same week. And there was a big sort of change. And I've never left this country ever since. I did my undergrad in computer engineering, and this was in 2005 to 9. So I got introduced to mobile app development pretty early, when I was interning at Microsoft, almost accidentally. And I think I found my true passion because I started building apps and I just felt that there has to be a better way to distribute those apps. And then came the App Store. So I think that's where my journey and my passions and everything kind of collided. And it felt like app development was essentially going to be my chosen path. But I also then realized that large enterprises was not where I saw myself for a long time, and I started chasing startups and started learning about startups and started learning about roles like product management, because I realized I was a good developer, but not a greatest developer around. And I made myself a simple goal that by the age of 30, I'll become a product manager and join a company like Google, because Google was one of the first companies, I would say, that had a product manager role. But my journey in Singapore brought me to a startup called Wego.com, which is where we also first met.
That's right.
Helped them as the first product manager for mobile, helped them build their mobile apps from scratch, helped them scale the mobile business globally. And we saw some success over there. I grew into a chief product officer role, and I got hooked to startups. It was just, at that point of time, I was like, okay, I found my true calling, and this is what I need to do. Help a few startups, learn from the best CEOs around, and then see if I can start my own company at some point. So after Wego, I was at FinXL for a while, then Homage in the same role. And right around COVID, is when my co-founder and I started talking about not only starting our own company, but also solving our own problems and looking beyond just Southeast Asia problems. So that's why Locofy was born. It's been about 4.5 years, and yeah, quite a journey. And happy to share more about what we do, maybe along the way.
Yeah, I mean that really is quite a journey. Like so many incredible Singapore startups you mentioned along the way as well. But you touched on Locofy. I think would love to go a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
What's the elevator pitch for Locofy?
So in short, it's a front-end development platform. We built our own proprietary AI to kind of be the layer between design tools and the designer's world. So design systems, design tools, design libraries, and the engineer's world. Specifically, like looking at front-end engineering. So whether you talk about web and mobile, writing UI code traditionally would take weeks, months, depending on your complexity of designs and also the skill levels of engineers. We thought 80% of that was grunt work. When I say we, it was primarily driven by my co-founder, one of the best engineers I've ever met in my life. And it was, I think, our combination of wanting to build amazing experiences, irrespective of like 2G networks, 3G, like cheap Android phones or the best-in-class iPhones. We just wanted to build amazing experiences, and that exposed us to really, thinking of it as why can't other companies do it? And how much of that work is repetitive and has some patterns that we can potentially build our own AI to solve and take away the grunt work and let engineers focus on the real, complex engineering, which is backend and like how to scale your stack and how to make it more secure and your proprietary business logic. So essentially, we accelerate front end within engineers and designers' stacks, plug it into any design tool you can think of today. For any web front-end engineering, stack like, I don't know, React, Angular, Vue, HTML, CSS, Svelte is coming up. We plan to add it in a couple of weeks. Swift and Kotlin for mobile apps, React Native and Flutter for hybrid app builders. And in future, this technology can be scaled to 3D and embedded systems and more like adaptive front-end development, future as well.
Oh, very cool. And I'd love to kind of go back a little bit and, talk a little bit about the origin story. I think you touched on it a little bit there, but like, I think many folks, hopefully they're listening to this, have kind of been in some of those roles. They've been on the design side or on the development side, and they know how painful that handoff can be, right? I think people call it a war zone sometimes, and it's tricky, right? Would you say there was like one particular moment that like crystallized for you, like, hey, there's something broken here that we need to fix?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think the decision was made when at Homage. I mean, I was in a healthcare startup during COVID, so you could imagine it was a very meaningful journey for our team. But we also, like many startups at that point of time, we decided not to scale the team and do more with less. And we had a very small team of like 6 engineers, led by my co-founder today. He was the head of engineering. And we were revamping our entire platform to become self-service first. So Homage was essentially a home caregiving platform. Think of it like, as in simple terms would be Uber for healthcare at home, for the elderly segment and their families. So we were moving onto a self-service end-to-end platform that included 3 iOS apps, 3 Android apps, an internal end-to-end tool, and a B2B web interface. Wow. It was about 900 screens or so being done by 6 engineers. Out of them, 3 of them were front end. And we did that in like 2 to 3 months maybe. I was always very particular about experience, and it's not just about a beautiful design, but also the implementation from an engineering point of view. And my co-founder and I had seen a lot of success in the previous companies we built. So Wego, for example, was one of the first, if not the first, editor's choice app on Google Play. I remember Google Play folks came down to Singapore and they were like, we want to meet your team because this is an amazing world-class app. You must have 30 engineers. And I was like, I have one engineer who was a gaming engineer. He did this in 28 days. And that's my co-founder today. Before Homage, we had seen enough of that whenever there's a new technology or a new platform or a new form factor, my co-founder and me working together, we were just somehow able to build these apps and websites that were showcased at Google I/O, Apple WWDC. I think Sundar Pichai showed off our PWA, one of the world's first that we built. But that was again done by my co-founder who had never done web before. So we knew that that's something we are particular about. And after having spent that much time, we also realize most people are not very good at it. They spend months, quarters. The larger the company, the longer they take to build even the most basic products. And they end up looking and feeling very average at best, despite spending millions. So when that happened in Homage, I just realized that we had done Frontend for such a long time by then, that these 900 screens were just like making our engineers really like cringe. Like, did it really have to be 900 screens? Do we really need all of this? And I think at that point of time, I could just see that pain, despite loving, building those experiences. And I asked my co-founder at that point, I was like, so hey, you're the most gifted engineer I've ever met. You've done gaming, killed it, built Android, the first app in 28 days, editor's choice, built a PWA without any web experience in 2 months, single-handedly killed it. If you're the best at something, or if you're that good at something and passionate about it, you will think over time of trying to do things more efficiently and faster. So like, why are you writing code the same way you were doing it 20 years ago? Isn't there something that can be done over here? And he was like, yeah, man, like 80% of the work I'm doing in writing these UI screens is grunt work. It's not real engineering. It can be controversial, but there's not much creativity that an engineer has to put when translating a design into code. And I think his experience made him say that, look, I think it can be automated. And we didn't think much of it. He's like, I'll spend tonight trying to do a POC. And I did some reading about it as well. We met the next day. He had a prototype running. And 2 days later, we had raised $1 million. We were just talking to our old friends, mentors, and people from the Google, Apple ecosystem that had known us for a long time, that would this help app developers in your company or in your ecosystem? And pretty much everyone invested, saying that, hey, if you can really do this, not only is it a great problem to solve, but you're also the best team that we can think of to do this. So yeah, it almost happened accidentally, based on that one big pain point. But also at that point of time, realizing that our last 10 years was what like kind of made us like stand apart, was our passion for building amazing interfaces. Whenever a human talks to a machine, it should be a delightful experience. That's essentially been our vision from day one.
Yeah, that's great. I still remember, you and your team always make great product with great design and UI, and that's what really, as you said, make your team stand out. So it's great that you're able to turn that and also identify some pain points, to build, a solution and business around that. I want to ask you about, the intersection of that and AI. As you were trying to solve this problem, maybe, AI was still in the early days during the time. So, was AI ready at a time, or you was trying to find like different approach, and sort of how does AI fit into when you're trying to solve that problem?
That's a great question. So for context, we started in Feb of 2021. So there was no Copilot, no Stable Diffusion, no ChatGPT, obviously, was still 2 years away. There was OpenAI for people who, most people know OpenAI because of ChatGPT. Developers knew it as these transformer-based APIs that, you give information, like you give a list of cities and it'll say, these are cities. So in a design, if there's basically like a lot of cards that say Singapore, Hong Kong, and whatever, and you need to make a prop in your code, then it gives it meaning. We were using a bunch of these small APIs, but when we started Locofy, we knew AI will play a big role. We knew AI, and especially certain techniques and models, had come a long way to become cheaper, more accessible, and more accurate. Nowhere compared to what it is today. That was essentially the reason why when we started the company, it was not Locofy.com, it was Locofy.ai. So we knew it had a role to play. We hadn't figured out everything, but we knew in the early days, a lot of it will be heuristics, plus some low-hanging fruit models. And then over time, we will start figuring out what are the most important problems to solve with AI, and also then like kind of have that approach rather than like what is that model that I give a design and it gives me code. That was not our way of thinking. It was that going from design to code requires maybe an 8 to 9 step process, right? Like organizing your designs, finding your HTML elements, defining components and props, maybe naming your layers, adding comments. So for us, it was more about let's build a platform that first allows you to go from design to code, even if it's mostly visual editing, and then see which parts are more painful and have a pattern and then can be solved with one of the techniques. I mean, we were 3 people in the team when we started. So we started off with our first AI model was a tagging model, which basically just looked at all the vectors in your designs and all the pixels and would identify them as either a button or input or date time picker or switch. And a big part of that was reinforcement learning, because we started giving recommendations and our customers would say yes and no. And we started learning from that at scale in free beta. And it got to a point where majority of the times where we made a recommendation, our customers would just say yes. And we're like, why do we need them to say yes then?
Right.
Let's just do it for them. And then it's more of a opt-out sort of a model where we accept all the recommendations, but we let you overwrite it if something's wrong. So that's how like we went through at least, I would say 10 to 15 iterations before the OpenAI like ChatGPT moment happened. Codex, LLMs, transformers became, talk of the town. And that's where we started accelerating, quite frankly. Because at that point of time, it was less of, hey, these models can help us solve, but it was more of user expectations will change now. So our design to code process, which was maybe 1,000 clicks, we gave ourselves a goal that we'll bring it down to 1 click. And the only way to do that in 1 click is to automate everything that happens in the background, where 80% of it was either a CNN model, a YOLO model, XGGraph, XGBoost, one of these deep learning models, or in some cases, even Gemini. So yeah, it has taken a long, I would say. We've seen some massive shifts, I would say, especially to do with like code generation. But our method was more about understanding designs rather than just take an LLM, build a wrapper around it, and see whatever happens. Yeah, we just didn't think the transformation would be this fast. And I think we just probably were in the right place, right time.
Yeah, incredible speed. You mentioned design to code a couple of times there, and a lot of tools claim to generate code, but the output, let's be polite, spaghetti code.
Correct.
And how do you ensure that the code's clean, it's maintainable, componentized, all of that good stuff? How are you training your models to really understand the intent?
Yeah. No, I think that's a great question. And I think that was our observation as well, because initially we thought Locofy, no one's thought about this idea, let's just do it. Then we started doing the research and we found like 15 tools that were essentially doing design to code. So our first question was, how do we not know about these tools? Because our team would generally be the early adopter. And then we started researching, and that's essentially what we found. They claimed to do design to code, but the code quality was not good enough. And quite frankly, we then looked at their teams. If we are going to enter the space of design to code, are we going to be able to beat this other team that has been doing it for 4 years if they have amazing people? But we took that shot because we didn't feel that there was a player in the market who truly understood the points that you just mentioned. Anyone can produce this like design to code. I think the true sort of success comes from if engineers start replacing their code with an AI code gen. So for us, the way we did it was we said, look, we are not going to build the entire app for you. We'll give you front-end code. And front-end code is, you can think of it as like 50 screens converted to code at the same time, but we started with smaller components, which meant that you're only dealing with like 50 to 100 lines of code at a time rather than a few 100,000 lines of code. We built our own evaluation system, which was when you go from design to code, the code has to be a pixel perfect representation of the design. It has to be interactive. It has to be broken into smaller components. So we built our own evaluation called Preview Match, which was that ultimately the code quality is subjective, but when you render that code, it should be an exact replica. Every pixel has to be exactly where it's supposed to be. That's the very bare minimum requirement. And then the second part would be, are all the buttons behaving like buttons? Are all the inputs behaving like inputs? Third would be that identifying a button is okay, but it has to potentially come from a material library or Ant or Bootstrap or React Native Kitten, UI Paper. There's like hundreds of them, or from your own design system. So I think we started building evaluation for each of these steps, but the North Star was always preview match, that if the resulting code, when we run it in a browser, does not meet your design, does not matter how good the code quality is, you're not going to continue. So considering that, we build these evaluation methods, but we also said that we only get one shot at this. We're not going to start charging customers until we have at least 60% of our customers telling us that the code quality is good. And that's why we kept the platform in free beta for 3.5 years. So for those 3.5 years, we kept iterating, and we realized getting feedback is difficult. Engineers don't want to get on a call. They don't want to reply to your emails. They like trying things for free though. So we built an engine which basically would lock the product after 3 weeks. And the only way to unlock and continue was to either fill up a feedback form or get on a call with me. No one chose the call option. So that allowed us to collect structured feedback. And it also allowed us to get feedback from real engineers rather than the no-coders. Because after 3 weeks, a no-coder would realize this is not my cup of tea. I need to code. And that allowed us to also essentially cut down the noise of feedback that didn't matter to our audience. And we did that for 3 years. So on a daily basis, we would get these 100 plus forms. And one of the questions was, how would you rate the code quality? Would you keep coming back? If we were to like close Locofy tomorrow, how would you feel about it? And then ask them specific questions about like, is it pixel perfect? How would you rate it? Even though we had our own evaluation, we would also ask them in a qualitative way as well. We did that over 3.5 years, and we had enough signals last year to say, hey, the kind of people saying the code quality is great now are real engineers, not just junior interns and freelancers. Nothing against freelancers. Some freelancers are amazing, but we wanted to make sure in the enterprise setting, the lead engineers are giving us that feedback. And yeah, after 3.5 years, we got to a point where we said, ultimately, if 60% of our the beta community was saying that the code quality is great and our internal metrics match, then that's the way to do it. Because code you can write the same, the same front end in 15 different ways, and none of them are wrong. Ultimately, it came down to, would an engineer take that code, make sense out of it? And we made it easy for them to just export a component and export maybe even a small section, a small page at a time. We broke it into smaller reusable components, followed the best practices. And today with LLMs, it doesn't just follow best practices, it can follow your best practices. So the best engineers don't just follow normal standards, they have their own standards.
Right.
So now it goes through the best practices for React and the best practices for Angular. But on top of that, we've built agents to understand your configs and apply that as a second layer as well. But yeah, in the early days, it was like, hey, the preview match is great, but if the engineer doesn't say it's great, then it doesn't matter. And that's why we kind of combine that with qualitative feedback from thousands of developers.
That's a pretty great hack to get feedback, I got to say. First time I've heard that one.
Yeah, so the first quarter, when I wanted feedback, I was like, we're running this for free. How do we know it's working?
Oh.
We had a goal of getting 8 engineers on a call in a quarter, and we missed it by 7.
Nice.
Like, this is not going to work. Like, emailing people, begging people doesn't work. And the people who were giving us some of the feedback that we were getting was like, I don't want to code. Why can't you give me the whole app? Why can't you give me the back end? And we were like, yeah, we're not building for you. So yeah, this hack worked and every time someone filled up this feedback, we sent it to Slack where the entire company could see it.
Nice.
So I think this was like what kept us honest and excited about what we're doing. If an engineer from Microsoft, from Google, from Airbnb says, hey, you know what? It saved me 30% of my time.
Right.
And we're on our first dirty version. That's already a great sort of start, and it validates what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And when they say that what could be better, that tells us what we need to do. Like, so our roadmap and where we stand was becoming clearer, and that sort of kept moving over the years. So I think that's where app to app sort of MCPs, agentic workflows will be a natural extension of what design to code means today.
Want to shift gear a little bit and ask about the impact on teams that you've seen. In our work with apps and game studios, everyone's also asking a lot of questions of, hey, does this mean now that AI means that I can have less developers, or it just means that my current developers just do a lot more? So want to hear from you. What are you hearing from your customers?
From our customers, it's almost unanimously no one has shortened their or reduced their team sizes. They are just looking for productivity gains. But it's important to understand who our customers are in the first place, right? So our customers right now are these large companies that want to be tech companies rather than the large tech companies. So I think in 2017, Satya Nadella said that for the 10 years before 2017, tech companies were hiring engineers. It was very clear. And then in 2017 was that sort of transition towards non-tech companies hiring more engineers than real tech companies, because car companies wanted to become tech companies, banks wanted to become tech companies, and pretty much everyone who doesn't want to be a tech company today. Problem was that these companies don't attract the best software engineers, right? So they end up like hiring hundreds and thousands of engineers, but anyone who has worked in a startup, like in our roles, we know you don't need thousands of engineers. If you get 10 of those, those super pro ninjas, 10x engineers that we call them, you don't need, it's not about numbers. But for some of these large companies wanting to be tech companies, they just have not attracted the right kind of engineers who want to all work in, the big tech companies in Silicon Valley and Indian startup ecosystem and about. So those are our customers, because for the first time in a long time, they're saying, hey, we can now innovate. They spend millions and billions of dollars, but they just don't get their projects done on time and the quality is not there. So for them, the fact that with Locofy, they can launch, 66% faster, lesser manual errors. It's basically the race to innovate rather than save money. But in doing so, the ROI that they're seeing already, some of them are saying, hey, I was planning to hire more engineers. Maybe I don't need to anymore, rather than, oh, let's cut the engineering team completely. So I think our customer base is these companies that have less problems with the cost and more, their bigger hurdle has been that they're not able to innovate fast enough. But smaller agencies that we've come across in the past, bootstrapped companies, for example, for them, saving money and saying, hey, I can now have 2 engineers doing the work of 10.
Right.
And that automatically just changes, my company's cash flow positions and profitability and stuff. So I think you can, essentially both of them are correlated, right? It's really about like, do you want to do less with more? More with less, or do you want to just get more and more and you're okay with keep feeding them? From a budget point of view, you're completely fine, but you just want more bang for buck. Most of our customers are seeing just productivity gains, launching faster, innovating faster. But we haven't had a conversation yet where our customers have told us that they're cutting the teams into half, even though they see 2x productivity gains or 9x productivity gains. Yeah.
Now, for some of the founders that may be listening, to the podcast, and they're thinking about building products with AI, today, right? Given all the advancements with AI and the different models and tools that different providers are providing, what advice would you provide to startup founders today who are thinking about building AI startups? What do you see as the moat that they could build around the product?
Yeah, I think some of the things to address would be that today anyone can build anything over a weekend, which I'm sure you've seen those hundreds of videos on social media, and that's a great place to be. But if it's so easy to build, what really your development is not really a moat anymore, right? And a lot of people are saying distribution is and blah blah blah. But if you're just building a wrapper on top of an LLM, and LLMs are going to get better and better, you could be building something for 2 years, which the next update on an LLM will just completely wipe out any wrapper built on top of it. So I think it's a little bit deeper. Very first thing is still solve real problems. Don't just like take this tool and build whatever it can build and then try and find a market for it. If you solve a real problem, chances are the solution to it would also not just be like a weekend app that any of your competitors can build, and LLMs getting better with scaling laws over time will also wipe out. So don't build a feature first of all. If I think the world of like building on top of like building a Figma plugin that allows you to take your design and change the color with just one command, Figma will just build it themselves. It's just So I think there are a couple of areas where companies were being built in the past that I think today, if you're starting a company, you should think really hard. If you're built on top of an existing player that owns the end experience, and you're just building a feature that works today, but it's just a simple LLM wrapper. If you can build it, those big giants can build it any day. And I think secondly, like just go back to the basics, right? Like solve a problem that you're willing to spend 10 years of your life on, and you have to have felt the pain, or you have to know someone who really feels that pain, rather than, hey, now I can just clone a LinkedIn whatever, or I can just clone a DocuSign and I can build a company because there's a market over there. I can sell it for cheap, and hence I have a business over there. So I think it still comes down to execution will still be very important. And if building products is going to become so easy and cheap, then how creative, and essentially that's where I think design will have a resurgence moment, where good design thinking and good creativity will make your product stand out and give you a moat, along with distribution, absolutely, and having not just one moat but a few moats. In our case, for example, our moat is that we have our own proprietary design models, and LLMs can keep getting better and better, but they just cannot understand designs. And if someone has to really compete with us, they have to build their own design models to get to the same quality that we've done over 4 years. Even if they do that, we are now deeply ingrained with large enterprises, and we have proprietary data that we train our models on that only we have access to, which you can't just like scrape from public sources. And on top of that, we have integrations. We are not just a design to code tool, we are a front-end development layer. We are heavily integrated into all design tools, design systems, libraries, IDEs, code repos. And the deeper we go, the more we learn, and the code quality becomes better with that proprietary data. So I think you have to think a little bit deeper as to if you could build it over a weekend, then anyone else can build it over a weekend as well. We are definitely living in that world now where just taking that first step and saying, let me go build something is not enough. You have to really think about defensibility from not just one place, but a few places.
Yeah, great answer. All right, Honey, we're going to move to our rapid fire segment.
All right.
So don't overthink it,
I probably will.
But just go with the first thing that comes to your mind.
All right.
So first question.
All right. One AI tool that you use every single day.
Oh, without doubt, ChatGPT. Man.
Yeah.
All my research on investors and everything else, just much easier to ask, rather than ask an intern. ChatGPT does it perfect.
One thing you wish AI could do, but it can't.
Gone back to taking sales calls.
Mm-hmm.
And now I have to go to like Atio and LinkedIn and my emails and get all that background and go through my note taker as well. I feel we need a tool that like combines everything, and 10 minutes, 5 minutes before that call tells me exactly who I'm meeting, because I'm terrible with names. Tells me what their role is, what the last conversation was, what the follow-up items were, and what I should do in this call to make it productive and short. But having said that, I think there must be a tool out there, because today everyone's building everything. Never know. I just haven't found one yet.
Yeah.
I could resonate with that pinpoint. Now, since we're in Singapore and in Southeast Asia, which is city in Southeast Asia now that you feel it has the most buzz and activities, around AI startups?
If you mean buzz where people are just meeting and talking about it, I think there's a few. If you mean buzz in terms of where actually good work is being done, I think it's Singapore. But yeah, I think I'm part of these groups where people meet up AI natives, they call themselves. They're not building anything. They're just like trying every new model that comes up, talking about it. I think it's an important part of adoption, but in terms of people solving serious problems and going beyond just rappers and doing foundational work, I think Singapore is leading the way in Southeast Asia. Yeah.
One piece of advice you'd give your younger self when you started coding?
Yeah, so I think I had a very late realization that school projects were not interesting enough, and that's all I did. And I got good grades and everything, but it was only when I was given a mobile device and I had my own machine and I could build whatever.
Right.
Is when I realized that. But I think to me it happened when I was 21, 22, and I keep telling myself, if I had even a personal computer at the age of 16, my career would have looked very different, because I really enjoyed coding and solving real problems. It's just that my younger self was just doing school assignments.
Yeah.
And I didn't push hard enough to go to the school lab and reserve it for that extra 2 hours and just go and build something rather than the school assignments. I would 100% do that today.
That's great. I think I recall reading in some, like, Bill Gates' biography at some point that he used to do exactly this.
That's exactly what I had in mind. That, he was one of the, I guess he came from an affluent family, and he had a machine at home. And a lot of people say that, yeah, he's smart. Like, there's no doubt about it. But just imagine having a machine at the age of 14 versus your first machine is given to you at 18.
Right.
That 4 years when you're learning like crazy and you can go and build whatever you want and you have a machine right next to you. I feel if I had that, I had the aptitude, I had the interest. It's just, I didn't push hard enough.
Last serious crystal ball question. What's the biggest change you see coming to software development that people aren't talking about enough?
In my 15, 20 years of coding and being an engineer or working closely with engineers and now building for engineers, I think in the last 1 to 2 years, this is the first time I felt like, hey, engineers are scared. And I've started seeing these posts that I used to enjoy engineering and like figuring out things. Now I'm just like writing in English and waiting for a machine to do something and then trying to find issues. So I think with all the glory that engineering and engineers have had and the special treatment and salary rises and everything, and designers have kind of been a little bit on the side, I think that will either get balanced or reverse a little bit, because if writing code and doing designs becomes easier, then I think a lot of people are going to be just building the same. I think we're moving towards a world where 90% of the products we use will just end up looking the same and feeling the same, and it'll become boring as hell. And that's where true craft will shine, whether you're a designer or an engineer. And that true craft, only the people who are amazing at, like either bringing that idea to a design or design to actually a product itself. Yeah, I think it will bring designers at the equal level as engineers. And I think a lot of engineers who've been getting away with just because everyone considers engineers an asset, that will change. A lot of mediocre engineers are going to feel uncomfortable if they're not already.
All right. Well, Honey, it has been really, really incredibly insightful. Thanks for sharing. My takeaway was, I really enjoyed hearing about, the role of actually still thinking hard about hard problem and trying to solve that. There's still a role for, builders who's trying to solve hard problems, and, the role of creativity that will actually differentiate, the products that are being built with, the help of AI, and that creativity still play a big role. So thank you so much for joining us on our first episode of this podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much. And for our listeners who want to try Locofy or follow your journey, where can they find you?
First of all, thanks for having me on your episode. Very honored. To find me, LinkedIn would be a very easy place, because I almost live on LinkedIn. But also you can just go to our website and book a demo, and most likely you'll see me on the call. So happy to also send my phone number, but maybe I'll just save it for later. A lot of scam calls these days.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm very much reachable through our website and LinkedIn here.
All right. Yeah, we'll link that, your LinkedIn and Locofy website in our show notes. And again, thanks again for joining us. And for our listener, thanks for tuning in to the first episode of AI Dev Diary.